The galaxy was a peaceful place, or so everyone believed. 32 years had passed since humans first stepped into the vast community of alien species. In those early days, the other races had watched with curious eyes as these strange bipedal creatures from a small blue planet called Earth joined their ranks. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSS Liberty, looking out at the stars through the main viewport. His ship was one of the newest in the human fleet, though by galactic standards it was nothing special. The Liberty carried standard missile launchers, basic energy shields, and what the aliens called primitive kinetic weapons. Most other species had moved beyond such simple technology centuries ago. Morrison was a career military man with graying hair and steady eyes. He had served in space for 20 years, watching as humanity slowly found its place among the stars. That place, unfortunately, was at the bottom of the galactic food chain. Humans were known as good traders, decent engineers, and peaceful neighbors. They were not known as warriors. The galactic community was ruled by 12 major species, each more powerful than humanity. The Zephyrians were tall, reptilian creatures with natural armor and a love for combat. Their ships carried plasma weapons that could melt through most materials. The Vorthon Empire consisted of insect-like beings with perfect mathematical minds. They built weapons with clockwork precision and deadly efficiency. Then there were the crystalline hierarchy, beings made of living crystal who could calculate battle outcomes before the first shot was fired. The Hegemony Council, which governed galactic law, gave these species the best territories, the richest mining rights, and the most important trade routes. Humans got the leftovers. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan worked in the Liberty's engineering section, deep in the ship's belly where the real magic happened. She was a brilliant woman with short red hair and oil-stained hands. For the past 6 months, she had been working on a secret project. The modifications she was making to the ship's weapon systems were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Kate had studied the aliens' approach to warfare. They focused on energy weapons and defensive shields. Their battles were like elaborate light shows, with colorful beams crossing space while protective barriers absorbed most of the damage. It was efficient, it was advanced, and it followed mathematical rules that everyone understood. Humans, however, had never been good at following rules. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Dr. Benjamin Carter was having another sleepless night. His laboratory was filled with complex machinery and mathematical equations that covered every available wall surface. Carter was a physicist, but more importantly, he was a dreamer. While other human scientists tried to copy alien technology, Carter wanted to perfect human ideas. His partner, Dr. Lisa Hayes, brought him coffee and sat down at the computer terminal. Lisa was practical where Carter was theoretical. She could take his wild ideas and make them work in the real world. Together they had been developing something they called Project Thunder God. "The calculations are still holding up," Lisa said, reviewing their work. "If we can build this thing, it will change everything." Carter nodded, rubbing his tired eyes. "The aliens think our kinetic weapons are primitive. They see our bullets and missiles as ancient technology, but they have never seen what happens when you accelerate matter to truly extreme velocities." The project was simple in concept, but incredibly difficult in execution. They wanted to build a railgun, a magnetic weapon that could fire projectiles using electromagnetic force. Railguns were not new technology. Humans had been experimenting with them for over a century, but Carter and Hayes wanted to build one on a scale never before attempted, one that could accelerate a tungsten rod to 12% of the speed of light. At such velocities, their calculations showed, the projectile would ignore energy shields completely. The aliens' defensive technology was designed to deflect or absorb energy weapons. It was not built to stop a solid object moving at relativistic speeds. Meanwhile, in the political centers of the galaxy, Ambassador Ryan Foster was fighting a different kind of battle. Foster was a diplomat, a man who solved problems with words instead of weapons. He had spent years negotiating with the Hegemony Council, trying to secure better conditions for human colonies. The meetings were always the same. Foster would present humanity's case for expansion into better territories or improved trade agreements. The alien representatives would listen politely, then explain why humans were not ready for such responsibilities. They spoke of humanity's youth as a spacefaring species, their lack of advanced military technology, and their insufficient understanding of galactic politics. What they really meant was that humans were weak. The Zephyrian representative, a massive creature named War Leader Klax, was particularly dismissive. "Your species fights with metal slugs and chemical explosives," he would say, his voice filled with amusement. "These are the weapons of children. When you develop real military technology, perhaps we can discuss real territorial rights." Foster kept his temper in check during these meetings, but inside he burned with frustration. He knew that humans were capable of much more than the aliens gave them credit for. The problem was proving it without starting a war that humanity could not win. Back on the Liberty, Admiral Morrison received his regular intelligence briefings. The reports were always similar. Zephyrian raiding fleets were moving closer to human space. Fourth-hand survey ships were mapping systems that humans had claimed but not yet colonized. The crystalline hierarchy was calculating the economic value of human-controlled resources. Morrison understood the pattern. The major powers were preparing to divide up human space among themselves. They saw humanity as a temporary inconvenience, a species that would eventually be absorbed or pushed aside. Lieutenant Commander Danny Walsh, Morrison's tactical officer, shared the Admiral's concerns. Walsh was young but sharp, with an eye for strategic thinking. He had been studying alien military tactics, looking for weaknesses in their seemingly superior forces. "Admiral," Walsh said during one of their private meetings, "I think we are approaching this all wrong. We keep trying to match their technology, to build better energy weapons and stronger shields. But what if our advantage lies somewhere else entirely?" Morrison was intrigued. "Explain." "Their entire military doctrine is based on energy warfare. Every defensive system, every tactical manual, every training program is designed around that assumption. They have never faced an opponent who fights differently." Walsh pulled up tactical displays showing recent alien conflicts. The battles were elegant and predictable, with established rules and expected outcomes. Ships would close to optimal range, exchange energy fire until one side's shields failed, then deliver killing shots with precision weapons. "What if we do not play by their rules?" Walsh asked. Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. Unknown to Walsh, similar conversations were happening throughout the human fleet. Change was coming, and it would arrive faster than anyone expected. In engineering, Lieutenant Sullivan ran another test on her mysterious modifications. The power readings were beyond anything the Liberty had ever generated. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn what humans were truly capable of. Dr. Carter made one final calculation on Kepler 442b. Project Thunder God was ready for field testing. All they needed was the right moment. That moment was approaching faster than anyone knew. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. New Denver was a small human colony on the edge of settled space, home to 50,000 people who had traveled light years to build new lives among the stars. The colonists grew food, mined rare minerals, and raised their children in the hope of a better future. Commander Jake Peterson was having breakfast in his quarters when the alarms began screaming throughout the defense station. Peterson was a Navy veteran who had been assigned to protect New Denver, though everyone understood his small force of 3 patrol ships was more for show than actual defense. Real threats were supposed to be handled by the Galactic peacekeeping forces. "Commander, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Sam Brooks, Peterson's communications officer. "I count 15 ships, Zephyrian configuration." Peterson dropped his coffee cup and ran to the command center. Through the main screen, he could see the attacking fleet taking formation. The ships were sleek and deadly, with the distinctive red markings of Zephyrian raiders. Their leader was the heavy cruiser Bloodfang, commanded by Captain Vextar, a war chief known for his cruelty. "Open a channel," Peterson ordered, though he already knew it was pointless. Captain Vextar appeared on screen, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been a smile. Behind him, Peterson could see the bridge of the Bloodfang, filled with weapons displays and battle screens. "Human commander," Vextar spoke in accented English, "your colony exists in space that belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. You have 1 hour to evacuate all personnel. After that, we will begin bombardment. This system is protected under galactic law," Peterson replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "You have no legal claim here." Vextar laughed, a harsh sound that made Peterson's skin crawl. "Legal claims are for species with real military power. Your kind hides behind words and treaties because you cannot fight. In 1 hour you will learn the difference." The communication ended. Peterson looked at his small crew, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. 3 patrol ships against 15 Zephyrian raiders was not a battle. It was a massacre waiting to happen. But Peterson was a military man, and military men did not abandon civilians. "All ships battle stations," he commanded. "Begin immediate evacuation of the colony. Move as many people as possible to the underground shelters." The next hour passed like a nightmare. Peterson's ships, the Denver Guard, Mountain Peak, and River Song, took defensive positions around the colony. They were small vessels armed with conventional missiles and kinetic point defense systems. Against Zephyrian plasma lances, they might as well have been throwing rocks. When the attack began, Peterson's fleet fought with desperate courage. The Denver Guard fired everything it had, launching dozens of missiles at the Bloodfang. The Zephyrian shields absorbed the impacts without visible damage. In response, a single plasma lance cut the Denver Guard in half, killing Peterson and 43 crew members in seconds. The Mountain Peak lasted another 10 minutes before enemy fire overloaded its reactor. The River Song managed to damage 1 Zephyrian frigate before being destroyed by concentrated fire from 3 enemy ships. With the human defense eliminated, Captain Vextar began the bombardment of New Denver. The colony's shields held for 30 minutes before failing completely. Plasma beams rained down on residential areas, factories, and schools. 2,000 colonists died in the first wave. Another 1,000 would die from injuries and radiation poisoning over the following days. The attack was broadcast throughout the galaxy by automated news drones. The footage showed Zephyrian ships systematically destroying a peaceful human settlement while rescue ships tried desperately to evacuate survivors. Admiral Jack Morrison watched the recordings from the bridge of the HSS Liberty. His hands were clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. Around him, the bridge crew worked in angry silence, their faces reflecting the rage that filled every human heart. "How long until we reach the Denver system?" Morrison asked. 18 hours, Admiral," replied Lieutenant Commander Walsh. "But sir, our orders are to avoid direct confrontation with superior forces." Morrison turned to face his tactical officer. "Danny, how many people lived on New Denver?" 50,000, sir. Reports indicate 30,000 survivors. 20,000 dead, Morrison said quietly. Men, women, and children murdered while the galaxy watched. In engineering, Lieutenant Sullivan received a priority message from Admiral Morrison. The message contained only 2 words: "Deploy Thunder." Sullivan smiled grimly and began the activation sequence for the Liberty's secret weapon. The modifications she had spent months installing were finally going online. Power flowed through new magnetic coils hidden within the ship's hull. The railgun system that Dr. Carter had designed was now operational. Meanwhile, news of the New Denver massacre reached the Hegemony Council on the galactic capital world. Ambassador Foster demanded an emergency session to address the unprovoked attack on a human colony. The alien representatives listened to his testimony with apparent sympathy. The Zephyrian ambassador, war leader Clax, expressed regret for the unfortunate incident. He claimed that Captain Vexistar had exceeded his authority and would face disciplinary action. However, he noted that the colony had been established in disputed territory, and some responsibility lay with human expansion policies. The Vorthan representative calculated that the economic value of 20,000 human lives was insufficient to justify major intervention. The crystalline hierarchy determined that military action against the Zephyrians would destabilize regional trade patterns. After 12 hours of debate, the Hegemony Council reached its decision. The New Denver incident would be classified as a minor territorial dispute. Economic sanctions would be applied to the Zephyrian Empire, but no military action would be taken. Captain Vexistar would be censured but not removed from command. Ambassador Foster sat in stunned silence as the verdict was read. 20,000 humans were dead, and the galaxy's response was economic sanctions and a strongly worded letter. When Morrison received news of the Council's decision, something fundamental changed in his mind. For 32 years, humanity had tried to be good galactic citizens. They had followed the rules, respected treaties, and trusted in diplomatic solutions. The reward for this behavior was watching their people murdered, while the galaxy shrugged its collective shoulders. "Admiral," Lieutenant Sullivan reported from engineering, Thunder God is fully operational. All systems are green. Morrison nodded slowly. What is our weapons status otherwise? Full missile complement, sir. Point defense systems online. But Admiral, if we engage the Zephyrian fleet, we will be outnumbered 5-1. Numbers, Morrison said, are about to become irrelevant. Captain Vextar was celebrating his victory in the command chamber of the Bloodfang. The raid on New Denver had been perfect, demonstrating Zephyrian superiority while suffering minimal losses. His fleet was now moving toward the next human system, planning to repeat the lesson. His tactical officer, a young warrior named Sub-Commander Rax, monitored long-range sensors. War Chief, I detect a human vessel approaching. Single ship, frigate class. Vextar looked at the display with amusement. One ship? Have the humans come to surrender? Unknown, sir. The vessel is broadcasting a challenge on all frequencies. Put it on speaker. Admiral Morrison's voice filled the Zephyrian bridge, calm and steady despite the impossible odds he faced. Captain Vextar, this is Admiral Morrison of the Human Space Navy. You are guilty of mass murder and crimes against galactic law. Surrender now or face the consequences. The Zephyrian bridge erupted in laughter. Vextar wiped tears from his reptilian eyes as he responded. Human Admiral, you have courage, I will grant you that. But courage without power is merely stupidity. I have 15 ships. You have one. The mathematics are simple. Morrison's reply was quiet but carried clearly across the communication channel. Captain, you have made two mistakes. First, you assume that mathematics alone determines victory. Second, you assume you know what weapons my ship carries. The communication ended. On the Liberty's bridge, Admiral Morrison turned to his weapons officer. Target the Bloodfang. Prepare to fire Thunder God. The galaxy was about to change forever. The space around the New Denver system became a battlefield unlike any the galaxy had ever witnessed. Captain Vextar arranged his 15 ships in a standard Zephyrian attack formation, with heavy cruisers in the center and lighter vessels forming a protective screen. It was a formation that had dominated space warfare for 3 centuries. Admiral Morrison brought the HSS Liberty to a dead stop 50,000 kilometers from the enemy fleet. His single ship looked tiny compared to the massive Zephyrian force, but Morrison showed no signs of retreat. On his bridge, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing for what everyone assumed would be their final battle. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Walsh reported, enemy fleet is moving to engagement range. They are charging plasma weapons. Morrison nodded calmly. Lieutenant Sullivan, status on Thunder God. In the engineering section, Sullivan ran through her final checks. The railgun system had never been tested in actual combat, but all indicators showed green. The magnetic coils were charged to full capacity. The tungsten projectile sat ready in the launch chamber, a simple metal rod that would soon make history. Thunder God is ready, Admiral. All power systems nominal. Very good. Maintain current heading and speed. The Zephyrian fleet moved closer, following their standard battle doctrine. Captain Vextar planned to demonstrate his superiority by destroying the Liberty slowly, piece by piece. He would target the engines first, then the weapons, leaving the humans alive long enough to understand their defeat. War Chief, Sub-Commander Rax reported, the human ship is not taking evasive action. They are maintaining position. Foolish pride, Vextar replied. They choose to die with honor rather than flee in shame. I can respect that, even if I do not understand it. The first exchange of fire came at 40,000 kilometers. 3 Zephyrian frigates opened up with their plasma lances, sending brilliant streams of superheated energy toward the Liberty. The human ship's shields flared as they absorbed the attack, but they held firm. Morrison's response was conventional. The Liberty launched a salvo of nuclear missiles, standard human weapons that the Zephyrians had seen many times before. Their point defense systems intercepted most of the missiles while their shields absorbed the few that got through. Is that the best they can do? Vextar laughed. Their weapons are truly primitive. But Admiral Morrison was not trying to win with missiles. He was positioning his ship for the perfect shot. The Liberty continued its steady approach, taking damage but refusing to break formation. At 30,000 kilometers, more Zephyrian ships joined the attack. The Liberty's shields began to fail under the concentrated fire. Damage reports flooded in from all sections of the ship. A plasma hit severed power to the forward missile tubes. Another blast destroyed the main sensor array. Admiral, Walsh called out over the noise of battle. Shields are down to 20%. We cannot take much more of this. Morrison watched his tactical display with the patience of a man who had planned for this exact moment. The Zephyrian fleet was moving into optimal position, confident in their overwhelming advantage. Captain Vextar's flagship, the Bloodfang, was leading the charge. Range to target? Morrison asked. 25,000 kilometers and closing, Walsh replied. Not yet. The Liberty shuddered as another plasma blast tore through her hull. Emergency lights flickered throughout the ship. The crew worked frantically to keep vital systems online while fires burned in 3 different sections. 20,000 kilometers. Admiral, we must return fire or withdraw, Walsh urged. At this range they cannot miss. Steady as she goes. 15,000 kilometers. Captain Vextar was enjoying the one-sided battle. The human ship was clearly dying, but it refused to surrender or retreat. Such courage deserved recognition even from an enemy. Sub-Commander, prepare boarding shuttles. When their ship is disabled, I want prisoners. These humans have earned the right to die as warriors. 10,000 kilometers. On the Liberty, Admiral Morrison finally gave the order that would change galactic history. Lieutenant Sullivan, you may fire when ready. In the engineering section, Sullivan placed her hand on the firing control. Thunder God firing now. The railgun discharged with a sound that could not be described in any language. It was not the roar of conventional weapons or the hiss of energy beams. It was something new, something that registered across multiple spectrums of reality. The ship's hull vibrated with harmonic frequencies that had never been heard before. The tungsten projectile left the barrel at 36,000 kilometers per second, 12% of the speed of light. At such velocity, the rod became something more than mere matter. It became a force of nature, a concentrated expression of human engineering and determination. The projectile crossed the 20,000 kilometers between ships in between 55 seconds. Zephyrian sensors designed to track energy weapons and conventional projectiles could not detect something moving at relativistic speeds. To them, the attack appeared to be instantaneous. Captain Vextar was in the middle of giving orders when the tungsten rod struck his ship. The projectile hit the Bloodfang's forward shields at a perfect 90-degree angle. The energy barriers designed to deflect plasma and absorb laser fire reacted to the kinetic impact as if it did not exist. The rod passed through the shields without slowing down. It struck the ship's armored hull and punched through 3 meters of advanced composite armor, as if it were paper. The projectile continued through the ship's interior, passing through 17 different decks in less than a microsecond. Everything in the rod's path simply ceased to exist. Bulkheads, machinery, and crew members were transformed into plasma by the kinetic energy transfer. The projectile exited through the stern of the ship, leaving a perfectly straight tunnel from bow to stern. For a moment, the Bloodfang continued forward, its systems not yet recognizing what had happened. Then the secondary effects began. The ship's main reactor, damaged by the passage of the tungsten rod, lost containment. The fusion core that powered the massive vessel went critical, creating a miniature star in the heart of the ship. The explosion that followed could be seen from 50 light-years away. Captain Vextar had time for exactly one thought before the end. In his final microsecond of life, the proud Zephyrian warrior realized that everything he knew about warfare had become obsolete in the span of a single heartbeat. The Bloodfang's destruction sent shockwaves through the surrounding fleet. 3 nearby Zephyrian ships were caught in the explosion, their hulls cracking under the gravitational stress of the imploding reactor. 2 frigates were destroyed instantly. A heavy cruiser lost main power and began drifting helplessly through space. The remaining Zephyrian ships reacted with panic and confusion. Their tactical computers could not explain what had happened. The sensors showed no energy discharge from the human vessel, no missile launch, no weapon signature of any kind. One moment their flagship was leading the attack. The next it was the expanding cloud of superheated gas. Sub-Commander Rax, now the senior surviving officer, tried to maintain order. All ships maintain formation. Continue the attack. But the Zephyrian warriors had lost their confidence. They were facing something they could not understand, could not predict, and could not defend against. The human ship that should have been destroyed was still there, still functional and apparently still dangerous. Admiral Morrison watched the enemy fleet's confusion with grim satisfaction. Mr. Walsh, open a channel to all Zephyrian vessels. Channel open, Admiral. Morrison's voice carried across space with quiet authority. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Admiral Morrison. Your commander is dead. Your flagship is destroyed. You have 10 seconds to begin retreat or I will demonstrate our weapons again. The silence that followed lasted exactly 7 seconds. Then, without coordination or orders, the entire Zephyrian fleet turned and fled. Ships that had been bred for war, commanded by warriors who had never known defeat, ran from a single human vessel like frightened children. Lieutenant Sullivan's voice came over the intercom, filled with awe and satisfaction. Admiral Thunder God performed exactly as designed. All systems remain operational. We can fire again in 30 seconds. But Morrison knew there would be no need for a second shot. The battle was over, and with it, humanity's place in the galactic order had changed forever. On the Liberty's bridge, the crew worked in stunned silence. They had witnessed something that would be talked about for centuries, a moment when the balance of power in the galaxy shifted in the space of a single heartbeat. Lieutenant Commander Walsh stared at his tactical display, watching the retreating Zephyrian ships disappear into hyperspace. Admiral, what do we do now? Morrison looked out at the stars, knowing that word of this battle would soon spread throughout the galaxy. Every alien species would learn that humanity possessed weapons that could ignore their defenses, weapons that could destroy their most powerful ships in seconds. Now, Mr. Walsh, we go home and prepare for the future, because after today, nothing will ever be the same. In the wreckage of the Bloodfang, automated distress beacons broadcast the final moments of the battle to anyone who would listen. The recordings would reach every corner of galactic space within days, carrying a simple message that would change everything. The news spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light itself. Within hours of the battle at New Denver, every major news network was broadcasting the footage. The destruction of the Bloodfang played on screens throughout the galactic core, from the crystal spires of the hierarchy homeworld to the metal cities of the Vorthon Empire. Dr. Elena Martinez sat in her office at the Xenological Studies Center on Earth, watching the reports flood in from across the galaxy. As humanity's leading expert on alien psychology and culture, she had been monitoring galactic communications since the battle ended. What she was seeing defied every prediction about alien behavior. They are terrified, she said to her assistant, Dr. Robert Kim. Look at these intercepts from Zephyrian military channels. They are calling our railgun death magic and impossible weapons. Their entire understanding of physics has been challenged. Kim reviewed the translation data on his tablet. The Vorthons are worse. Their mathematical models cannot explain what happened. They keep running calculations, but the numbers do not make sense to them. How does a kinetic weapon ignore energy shields? Martinez pulled up more reports from their deep space monitoring stations. The crystalline hierarchy is recalculating everything. 300 years of tactical doctrine just became worthless. They are asking questions they never thought they would need to ask. On Mars, Colonel Steve Johnson was having a very different kind of morning. As commander of the Mars Defense Grid, he was responsible for protecting humanity's second world from alien attack. His job had been relatively quiet for decades, but today his communications board was lighting up like a Christmas tree. Colonel, Sergeant Patricia Hayes called from the communications station, we are receiving requests for meetings from 17 different alien governments. The Altarian Federation wants to discuss trade agreements. The Nexus Collective is offering mutual defense pacts. Sir, some of these species have never even talked to humans before. Johnson studied the list of incoming messages, his experienced military mind recognizing the pattern. They are not offering friendship, Sergeant. They are offering bribes. Every one of them wants to make sure we do not point our railguns at their worlds. The most urgent communications were coming from the Hegemony Council itself. Emergency sessions had been called. The same alien representatives who had dismissed the New Denver massacre as a minor incident were now demanding immediate meetings with human leadership. Ambassador Foster received the summons while he was still in his quarters on the council station. The message was marked with the highest priority codes and requested his immediate appearance before the full assembly. Foster smiled grimly as he read the formal language. 24 hours ago, these same beings had refused to take action against Captain Vextar. Now they wanted to talk. The emergency session was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives from all 12 major species were present, along with observers from dozens of minor civilizations. The Great Assembly Hall which could hold thousands, was packed to capacity. War leader Clax of the Zephyrians was the first to speak. The massive reptilian warrior, who had always been so confident in his species' military supremacy, now looked shaken and uncertain. "Ambassador Foster," Clax began, his voice lacking its usual arrogance, "the Zephyrian Empire wishes to express its deepest regrets regarding the New Denver incident. We are prepared to offer full compensation to the families of those killed, along with guarantees that such actions will never be repeated." Foster looked around the assembly hall, noting the anxious faces of beings who had never shown humanity anything but condescension. "War Leader Clax, yesterday you called the murder of 20,000 humans a minor territorial dispute. What has changed your perspective?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the hall knew the answer, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Humanity now possessed weapons that could destroy any ship in the galaxy, and no one knew how many such weapons existed. The Vorthon representative, an insect-like creature called Prime Calculator Zex, activated its translation device. "The Vorthon Empire has completed its analysis of the battle footage. The weapon your species employed operates outside known physical parameters. We require technical specifications to update our defensive calculations. I am afraid that information is classified," Foster replied smoothly. "But surely," Zex continued, "in the interest of galactic stability, you would be willing to share details about your weapons technology? We could offer significant technological exchanges in return." Foster had been waiting for this moment for years. "Prime Calculator, humanity has offered technological exchanges many times in the past. Your standard response was that we had nothing of value to offer. Has that assessment changed?" The silence that followed was deafening. Every alien in the hall understood the implications. Humanity was no longer the weak species begging for scraps. They were now a power that demanded respect. Captain Lisa Wright was monitoring these negotiations from her position aboard the HSS Constitution, one of the first ships to receive the new railgun systems. Her intelligence team was intercepting communications across the galaxy, and the patterns they were seeing were remarkable. "Captain," Intelligence Officer Mark Taylor reported, "we are tracking massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. Every major power is repositioning their forces, but not in attack formations. They are pulling back from human space." Wright studied the tactical displays, watching as alien fleets that had been slowly encroaching on human territory suddenly reversed course. "They do not know how many ships we have armed with railguns. They are assuming all of our vessels carry the new weapons. Should we correct that assumption?" Taylor asked. Wright smiled. "Absolutely not. Let them wonder." The fear was not limited to military circles. On the trading stations and commercial hubs throughout the galaxy, alien merchants were canceling contracts and rerouting cargo ships. Trade routes that passed through human space were being abandoned, not because of human aggression, but because alien captains were afraid to risk encounters with human warships. The economic implications were staggering. Within a week of the battle, human colonies that had struggled to attract investment were being courted by alien corporations. Worlds that had been ignored by galactic survey teams suddenly found themselves hosting delegations of interested parties. Dr. Carter was working around the clock in his laboratory on Kepler 442b, designing new applications for the railgun technology. The success of Thunder God had proven that human kinetic weapons could revolutionize space warfare. But Carter's mind was already moving beyond ship-to-ship combat. "Lisa," he called to his partner, "look at these calculations. If we scale down the technology, we could create point defense railguns that could stop incoming missiles. Scale it up, and we could build orbital bombardment systems that could strike planetary targets with pinpoint accuracy." Dr. Hayes reviewed his work, her practical mind already seeing the applications. "Ben, if we can build these systems, we could make conventional invasion impossible. No alien force could land troops on a world defended by kinetic weapons." "Exactly. And the beautiful part is that we do not need exotic materials or complex energy systems. This is all basic physics and engineering, technologies that humans have been developing for centuries. The aliens, meanwhile, were discovering just how unprepared they were for this new type of warfare. Emergency research programs were being launched across the galaxy, with every major power desperately trying to develop defenses against kinetic weapons. The crystalline hierarchy, with their mathematical precision, were the first to understand the true scope of the problem. Their calculations showed that defending against relativistic projectiles would require completely new approaches to shield technology, approaches that could take decades to develop. The Zephyrians, proud of their warrior traditions, found themselves facing an enemy that their combat doctrine could not address. How do you fight an opponent whose weapons ignore your defenses and can destroy your ships from ranges where you cannot effectively return fire? The Vorthan Empire's response was perhaps the most telling. For the first time in their recorded history, they began developing non-mathematical approaches to military problems. When pure calculation failed, they were forced to consider factors like fear, uncertainty, and the unknown. Admiral Morrison returned to Earth as a hero, but he carried the weight of responsibility for what came next. In his debriefing with human leadership, he made his position clear. The galaxy is afraid of us now, but fear alone will not keep the peace. We need to be smart about how we use this advantage. Show too much weakness and they will band together against us. Show too much strength and they will see us as an existential threat that must be destroyed. Fleet Admiral Rachel Kim, Morrison's superior, nodded grimly. What do you recommend, Jack? We continue building railgun-equipped ships, but we do not advertise our numbers. We respond to threats decisively, but we do not initiate conflicts. Most importantly, we let the aliens come to us with offers and negotiations. Right now, they need us more than we need them. As if to prove Morrison's point, Ambassador Foster received another priority message from the Hegemony Council. The alien leadership was, 6 months after the destruction of the Bloodfang, the galaxy had become a very different place. The balance of power that had remained stable for centuries shifted so dramatically that historians would later mark the battle at New Denver as the beginning of a new galactic age. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSS Thunderbolt, the flagship of humanity's newly expanded fleet. Through the main viewport, he could see the orbital shipyards of Proxima Station, where dozens of human vessels were being fitted with railgun systems. The Thunder God technology had evolved beyond Dr. Carter's original design, with new versions optimized for different types of combat. Admiral, Commander Paul Davis reported from the tactical station. We are receiving another request for escort services. The Altarian merchant fleet wants protection through the Zeta sector. They are offering triple the standard rate. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. Escort duty had become one of humanity's most profitable enterprises. Alien merchants afraid of encounters with human warships but equally afraid of traveling unprotected were paying enormous sums for human naval escort through dangerous regions of space. Grant the request, but make sure they understand our rules of engagement. We protect cargo and crew, but we do not involve ourselves in commercial disputes. The irony was not lost on Morrison. Human ships, once barely tolerated in alien space, were now the most sought-after escorts in the galaxy. Every merchant captain knew that pirates and raiders would rather flee than face human railgun technology. Lieutenant Colonel Jennifer Stone was experiencing similar changes in her role as commander of the Mars Orbital Defense Grid. Her once quiet assignment had become one of the most important positions in human space. Every day brought new communications from alien governments seeking meetings, negotiations, and treaties. Colonel Sergeant Kevin Walsh reported, the Hegemony Council is requesting another formal summit. They want to discuss what they are calling a comprehensive peace and cooperation framework. Stone smiled at the formal language. What they want to discuss is how to keep us from pointing railguns at their homeworlds. Schedule the meeting, but make sure they understand we negotiate from a position of strength now. The transformation was visible throughout human space. Colonies that had struggled for resources were now receiving investment offers from alien corporations. The same species that had once restricted human expansion were now actively encouraging it, hoping to secure favorable relationships with the new galactic power. Dr. Carter had moved his research operation to a massive facility on Luna, where teams of scientists worked to develop new applications for kinetic weaponry. The God Rod orbital bombardment system was entering its final testing phase. Early results showed that tungsten projectiles, dropped from orbit, could strike planetary targets with nuclear-level force but without the radiation or long-term environmental damage. The mathematics are beautiful, Dr. Hayes told Carter as they reviewed the test data. We can deliver precision strikes anywhere on a planet's surface with just gravity and kinetic energy. No explosives, no complex targeting systems, just physics. Carter was already thinking beyond planetary bombardment. Lisa, what if we could scale this technology even further? What if we could accelerate projectiles to 20% of light speed? 30%? At those velocities, Hayes calculated quickly, we would be approaching theoretical limits. The energy requirements would be enormous but not impossible. And the tactical implications? Carter's voice trailed off as he considered the possibilities. At such speeds, human weapons could strike targets across entire star systems in minutes rather than hours. The alien response to human technological advancement was varied and telling. The Zephyrian Empire, once the galaxy's dominant military power, had sued for peace after losing 3 more ships to Commander Davis's Railgun cruiser in what should have been a routine patrol encounter. War leader Clax himself had traveled to Earth to sign the peace treaty, his massive form looking diminished in the human Capitol building. The ceremony was broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing the proud Zephyrian warrior formally acknowledging human military superiority. The Zephyrian Empire recognizes the sovereignty of human space, Clax declared in his formal statement. We pledge to respect all human territorial claims and to seek peaceful resolution to any future disputes. The words were diplomatic, but everyone understood the real message. Do not fight the humans, because you cannot win. The Vorthan Empire had taken a different approach, offering technological exchanges that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. Prime Calculator Zex personally led a delegation to human space, bringing gifts of advanced computer systems and manufacturing techniques. The Vorthan Empire wishes to learn from humanity's innovative approaches to physics and engineering, Zex announced. We believe that cooperation between our species will benefit both civilizations. What Zex did not say, but everyone understood, was that the Vorthons were desperately trying to develop countermeasures to human railgun technology. Their mathematical approach to warfare had proven inadequate against weapons that operated outside their calculated parameters. Ambassador, Foster found himself in the unusual position of turning down more offers than he accepted. The same alien governments that had dismissed human concerns for decades were now competing for favorable treatment from human leadership. Ambassador, his aide, Captain Gary Nelson reported during their morning briefing. We have received 17 new trade proposals, 12 mutual defense offers, and 6 requests for technological cooperation agreements, all from species that refused to deal with us last year. Foster reviewed the proposals with satisfaction. Gary, do you remember when I used to beg these same governments for basic trading rights? Now they are offering us exclusive contracts and preferential access to their most advanced technologies. What is our response strategy, sir? We make them compete for our attention. For 30 years, we accepted whatever scraps they threw our way. Now they learn what it feels like to be the supplicants. The change was not limited to major powers. Throughout the galaxy, minor species that had been oppressed by the traditional hierarchy were looking to humanity as a potential protector. The Kepler Alliance, a group of small worlds that had been bullied by larger neighbors for generations, formally requested human protection. Captain Sandra Lee, commanding the railgun destroyer HSS Defiance, was assigned to patrol Kepler space. Her first encounter with alien aggressors demonstrated how completely the galactic dynamic had shifted. Captain Lieutenant Eric Thompson reported, 3 hegemony enforcement vessels are demanding that the Kepler world surrender their mineral rights. They claim economic jurisdiction under old treaty provisions. Lee opened a communication channel to the hegemony ships. Enforcement vessels, this is Captain Lee of the Human Space Navy. You are ordered to withdraw from Kepler space immediately. The response came quickly, filled with the arrogance that had once characterized alien interactions with humans. Human vessel, you have no authority in this sector. These worlds are under hegemony economic control. Lee's reply was calm and measured. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal, or I will interpret your presence as a hostile act. The hegemony commander clearly expected the humans to back down when faced with 3-to-1 odds. Instead, after exactly 30 seconds, Lee fired a single railgun round across the bow of the lead enforcement ship. The tungsten projectile passed within meters of the alien vessel, close enough for their sensors to detect its impossible velocity. The 3 hegemony ships fled immediately, leaving Kepler space without another word. Such encounters were becoming common throughout the galaxy. Species that had dominated their neighbors for centuries were discovering that human protection made their former victims untouchable. The old order, based on military strength and technological superiority, was collapsing as smaller civilizations allied themselves with humanity. Dr. Martinez published her analysis of the galactic transformation in the Journal of Xenological Studies. Her conclusions were stark and clear. The introduction of human kinetic weaponry has fundamentally altered the strategic balance of galactic civilization. Traditional concepts of military superiority, based on energy weapons and defensive shields, have become obsolete. Species that dominated the galaxy for centuries now find themselves strategically vulnerable to human technological advantages. Her report was read throughout human space and, through intelligence networks, throughout the galaxy. Alien governments studied every word, trying to understand how completely their world had changed. The crystalline hierarchy, with their mathematical precision, were the first to publicly acknowledge the new reality. Their official statement was broadcast on all galactic frequencies. The hierarchy recognizes that galactic strategic calculations have been permanently altered by human technological innovation. We believe that cooperation with humanity serves the long-term stability of galactic civilization. The hierarchy formally proposes the establishment of a new Galactic Security Council, with humanity holding a permanent seat and veto power over military actions. The proposal was unprecedented. The crystalline hierarchy was offering to share galactic governance with a species they had considered